The sand beneath Marcus Hale's boots was the wrong color, not the golden beaches of Earth he remembered from childhood, nor the rust-red deserts of Mars where he'd spent his engineering apprenticeship. This sand was black as obsidian, drinking in the triple sun's light like a hungry void. It crunched under his weight with a sound like breaking glass, each step a reminder that he was very, very far from home. The roar of 50,000 alien throats hit him like a physical force as he stepped through the gateway into the crucible. The arena stretched out before him, a massive bowl carved from the bedrock of Veroth Prime itself. Tiers upon tiers of spectators rose into the hazy atmosphere, their forms a nightmare taxonomy of scales, chitin, tentacles, and things his human brain couldn't quite categorize. The air tasted of copper and ozone, thick with the pheromones of predators eager for blood. Marcus flexed his fingers inside the crude gauntlets they'd given him. The metal was some local alloy that chafed against his skin, already drawing blisters after just minutes of wear. His armor was little more than scraps of leather and chain, designed more for spectacle than protection. The message was clear: humans were meant to die entertainingly here. 6 days. That's all the time that had passed since the raiders had hit their transport vessel during what should have been a routine cargo run between the outer colonies. 6 days since he'd watched Alara's face disappear behind the slaver's containment field, her green eyes fierce even in captivity. 6 days of being processed, cataloged, and prepared for this moment. The announcement system crackled to life, broadcasting in a dozen languages simultaneously. The Verothian dialect that reached his translator implant was flowery and grandiose. Citizens of the Empire, witnesses to glory today. The Crucible offers you fresh meat from the soft worlds, a human male, barely worth the chains that brought him here. Faces his first trial. Will he last 30 seconds? A minute, place your bets now. Marcus almost smiled. They had no idea what humans were capable of when cornered. He'd been a combat engineer in the Colonial Defense Force before mustering out to marry Alara. He knew 23 ways to kill with improvised weapons, could calculate blast radiuses in his head, and more importantly, he had something to fight for. The opposite gate began to grind open, and Marcus's opponent emerged. His heart sank a little. The creature that lumbered out stood 12 feet tall, covered in overlapping plates of natural armor that gleamed like polished bronze. 6 arms sprouted from its torso, each ending in claws that looked capable of shearing through steel. Its head was a nightmare of compound eyes and mandibles that clicked and chattered as it moved. But there was something off about its gait. The creature favored its left side, and one of its middle arms hung slightly lower than it should. Marcus's engineer's eye caught the telltale signs of a poorly healed injury, maybe damage to whatever this thing used for a skeletal structure. The creature stopped 20 meters away, tilting its head to study him. Then, impossibly, it spoke, not through the arena's translation system, but in broken, guttural English. You are the mechanic, from Ganymede Station. Marcus's blood turned to ice water. 3 months ago, he'd helped repair a damaged freighter at Ganymede. The captain had been one of these creatures, a Calaxian, desperate to make a delivery deadline. Marcus had jury-rigged their drive system, saved them weeks of dock time. The Calaxian's mandibles clicked in what might have been agitation. It took a step closer, and the crowd roared approval, thinking the kill was about to begin. But its voice dropped to barely above a whisper, pitched so only Marcus could hear. You're female, the one with green eyes. She is marked for the Royal Blood Games, 3 days hence. They prepare her now. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Marcus had assumed Alara was somewhere in the slave markets, maybe already sold to some mining operation. But the Royal Blood Games. He'd heard whispers in the holding cells. That was where the elite came to watch their personal champions fight, where the stakes weren't just life and death, but ownership of entire worlds. Why tell me this? Marcus hissed back, keeping his body tense, playing the part of a warrior, sizing up his opponent. Debt. You fixed my ship, asked no questions about cargo, took half payment, the Calaxian's claws flexed. But debt only goes so far. We fight now. One dies. That is the way. The creature lunged without further warning. Covering the distance between them with frightening speed, Marcus dove to the side, feeling claws whistle through the air where his head had been. He rolled, came up running, his mind racing through calculations. 6 arms meant multiple attack vectors, but also multiple balance points. The injured side was the key. The Calaxian pursued, its massive bulk churning through the black sand. The crowd was on its feet now, howling for blood. Marcus spotted what he needed, one of the decoration pillars that dotted the arena floor. They were meant to provide dramatic combat opportunities, made from some local stone that looked like marble but was apparently much more brittle. He sprinted for it, hearing the Calaxian gaining ground behind him. At the last second, he planted his foot on the pillar's base and ran up its surface, using his momentum to carry him higher than should have been possible in Varoth Prime's slightly lower gravity. The Calaxian's claws slammed into the pillar where he'd been, shattering the stone into fragments. Marcus pushed off from the pillar, twisting in midair. Time seemed to slow as he arced over the creature's head. He could see every detail, the patterns in its compound eyes, the scars on its armor plates, the way its damaged arm couldn't quite track his movement. He landed on its back, immediately wrapping his arms around what passed for its neck. The Calaxian bucked and thrashed, its multiple arms trying to reach him, but the injury had left a blind spot. Marcus held on, applying steady pressure to what he hoped were breathing vents along the creature's neck ridge. The crowd's roar had turned to something else now, a mixture of surprise and bloodthirsty glee. They'd expected a quick kill. Not this. Listen to me. Marcus growled into where he thought the creature's auditory organs might be. You're going to pass out in about 10 seconds. When you do, stay down. Play dead. They'll call the match. Cart you off. You'll live. The Calaxian struggles were already weakening. Why? It gasped. Because I'm going to need every ally I can get if I'm going to burn this place to the ground. The creature went limp. Marcus released his hold and stood, raising his arms to the crowd. The arena erupted. He'd won his first match in under 3 minutes and somehow made it look easy. But his mind was already elsewhere, calculating odds and angles. 3 days. Alara would be in the Royal Blood Games in 3 days. That meant he had to not just survive, but excel. He had to become something these bloodthirsty crowds had never seen before. He had to become their favorite monster. The medical teams were already rushing out to collect the Calaxian's corpse. Marcus saw one of them check for life signs, saw the subtle nod to his colleague. They'd take the creature below, patch it up, probably throw it back into the general population of fighters. It might die tomorrow, or the next day, but it would have one more chance. That was all anyone could ask for in this place. As Marcus was escorted back through his gate, he caught a glimpse of the observation boxes high above the arena floor. Silhouettes moved behind privacy screens, the real power brokers of Varoth Prime. One screen was clear, and behind it stood a figure that made Marcus's skin crawl. Overseer Korath was everything the stories had promised, and worse. 7 feet of lean, predatory grace wrapped in biomechanical armor that seemed to shift and breathe on its own. His species, the Varothians, looked almost humanoid until you got to the details, the extra joint in each limb, the eyes that burned with their own bioluminescent fire, the mouth that split too wide, revealing rows of teeth that belonged in a deep-sea nightmare. Korath was watching him. Not the crowd, not the other fighters being prepared, him. Those burning eyes tracked Marcus all the way to the gate, and just before he passed through, Marcus saw the Overseer's too wide mouth curve into what might have been a smile. Back in the fighter's warren, the other slaves gave Marcus a wide berth. Most were aliens of various species, all looking worn down by their circumstances. A few humans huddled in one corner, but when Marcus approached, they turned away. He understood. Hope was dangerous here. Better to not get attached to someone who'd probably be dead by tomorrow. Marcus found a relatively clean corner and sat, his back against the wall. He needed to think, to plan. The traditional path through the arena fights could take weeks, even months, too long, but there were rumors of ways to advance faster, challenge matches. Crowd favorites could call out higher-ranked fighters. It was risky, almost always fatal for the challenger, but it was possible. A shadow fell across him. Marcus looked up to find another human standing there, though human was being generous. Half the man's face had been replaced with crude cybernetics, likely arena repairs after a match gone wrong. His left arm was completely mechanical, ending in what looked like an industrial claw. "You're the engineer," the man said. It wasn't a question. "Was," Marcus replied carefully. "I'm Garrett, used to be Colonial Marines, 5th Division." The cyborg sat down uninvited. "Saw your match. You didn't fight like an engineer." "I had good teachers." Garrett studied him with his one good eye. "You held back. Could have killed the Calaxian 3 different ways I counted. Why didn't you—" Marcus considered his options, then decided on honesty, or at least partial honesty. "Because killing everything they put in front of me is what they expect. I'm going to give them something else." "A show? A story. Every crowd loves a good story." Garrett was quiet for a moment. "You know about the Royal Blood Games?" Marcus's head snapped up. "What do you know?" "I know they're bringing in fresh acquisitions. I know one of them is a human female with green eyes who fought so hard during intake that they had to stun her 3 times. Garrett's mechanical hand clenched and unclenched. "And I know that the only way to get into those games is to win the Overseer's personal attention." "How do I do that?" "You already have. That little mercy play out there. Korath loves that stuff, thinks it's hilarious when the prey shows weakness. But here's the thing, he also loves a surprise. You want into the Royal Games, you need to give him something he's never seen before." Before Marcus could respond, the Warren speakers crackled to life. "Fighter designation Human 336. Report to combat preparation. Special match commencing in 10 minutes. That was his designation. Marcus stood, his mind racing. A special match this soon after his first fight was unusual. Either someone upstairs wanted to see more, or they wanted to see him dead. Garrett grabbed his arm as he passed. "Remember, kid, in this place, the only story that matters is the one written in blood. Make sure it's not yours." The preparation chamber was different this time. Instead of the basic weapons rack, there was an array of more exotic options: electro whips, sonic disruptors, even what looked like a primitive projectile weapon. But it was the arena employee waiting for him that caught Marcus's attention. She was Thurlian, a species known for their empathic abilities and, ironically, their pacifist philosophy. Her blue-scaled skin shimmered with barely controlled emotion patterns. "You are to face 3 opponents," she said without preamble, simultaneously. Marcus's stomach dropped. 3? The crowd was impressed. They want to see more. The Overseer has authorized enhanced combat parameters. She gestured to the weapons. "You may choose 2. Marcus examined the options, his engineer's mind cataloging each one. The projectile weapon was tempting, but it looked like it only had 6 shots. The electro whip could be useful for crowd control, but required skill he didn't have. Then he saw them a pair of devices that looked like standard mining charges, the kind used for asteroid braking. "Those aren't weapons," the Thurlian said, following his gaze. "Everything's a weapon if you're creative enough," Marcus replied, picking them up. They were heavier than they looked, definitely modified from standard specs. "What else?" "A blade, any blade." He selected a simple combat knife, nothing fancy, sharp enough to cut, balanced for throwing if necessary. The Thurlian scales shifted to a pattern he couldn't read. "You're going to die," she said quietly. "The 3 they've selected are veteran pit fighters. They've fought together before." "Then why do you care?" Her scales rippled. But you're female. The one they're preparing. I've seen her. She has the kind of spirit that—" She trailed off, then straightened. "Survive this. and you'll be entered into the accelerated bracket. 3 more wins after this, and you can challenge for a spot in the Royal Games. The gate was already grinding open. Marcus tucked the mining charges into his belt, gripped the knife, and stepped through. The crowd's roar was even louder than before, and he could see why. The arena had been modified, transformed into a maze of obstacles and elevation changes. It looked like a war zone, which Marcus supposed it was. His opponents were already visible, spread out in a triangle formation. The first was a Ragellan, all spines and acid-secreting skin. The second was something Marcus didn't recognize, a writhing mass of tentacles with what might have been eyes or might have been teeth scattered throughout. The third was almost boringly humanoid until you noticed the extra set of arms and the way its skin seemed to shift between solid and some kind of semi-liquid state. They moved in coordination, the Ragellan going high, using the obstacles to gain elevation, while the tentacle mass spread out, trying to flank. The shapeshifter came straight at him, its form rippling and changing as it moved. Marcus ran, not away but lateral, forcing them to adjust their formation. He needed to understand the arena's new layout, find the spots where he could control the engagement. His fingers found one of the mining charges. Feeling for the manual override he'd spotted, these weren't just breaching charges. They were something more complex, programmable. The shapeshifter caught him first, one of its arms extending impossibly long to wrap around his ankle. Marcus went down hard, the black sand grinding against his face. He rolled with the momentum, slashing with the knife. The blade passed through the extended limb like water. But the creature just laughed, the appendage reforming instantly. A shadow fell over him, the Ragellan, dropping from above. Marcus rolled aside as spine-covered fists slammed into the sand where he'd been. Acid hissed and bubbled, turning the sand to glass, too close, way too close. The tentacle mass was closing in now, and Marcus could see his death approaching from 3 angles. But he also saw something else, the pillars supporting the elevated sections. They were the same brittle stone as in his first fight, but these were load-bearing. He activated the first charge, not throwing it but slapping it against the shapeshifter's center mass as it lunged for him. The creature recoiled, trying to reform around the foreign object, but Marcus was already moving. He dove between the Ragellan's legs, feeling acid drops sizzle against his back, and sprinted for the nearest pillar. The tentacle mass was faster than he'd expected. It flowed across the ground like liquid nightmare, tentacles whipping out to snare him. One wrapped around his wrist, yanking him off balance. Another went for his throat. Marcus let it pull him in, then activated the second charge and pressed it against what he hoped was the creature's main mass. Both charges were now set, their modified timers counting down. But his opponents didn't know that. They thought he was just desperately trying to fight back with whatever he had. The Ragellan's fist caught him in the ribs, sending him flying. Marcus felt something crack, tasted blood. He hit one of the elevated platforms hard, stars exploding across his vision. Through the pain, he could hear the crowd going wild. This was what they'd come for. Get up, he told himself. For Alara, get up. He pushed himself to his feet just as the shapeshifter flowed up onto the platform, its form solidifying into something with far too many teeth. The tentacle mass was climbing the support pillar, and the Ragellan was positioning itself below, ready to catch him if he tried to jump. 5, Marcus whispered, backing toward the platform's edge. The shapeshifter lunged. 4. Marcus dropped, sliding between its legs, using the knife to hamstring whatever it was using for locomotion. 3. The tentacle mass reached the platform, spreading out to cut off his escape. 2. Marcus grabbed the platform's edge and swung himself over. Hanging by his fingertips, the Ragellan's acid-covered hands reached for him. 1. Marcus let go, dropping straight down, twisting to avoid the Ragellan's grasp. He hit the sand hard, his injured ribs screaming, and rolled away. The charges detonated. But these weren't simple explosive charges. They were gravitational implosion devices designed to create micro-singularities for mining operations. The shapeshifter and tentacle mass were suddenly compressed to single points, their masses warping space around them. The platform above, suddenly without support and caught in the gravitational fields, came crashing down. The Rigellan had just enough time to look up before several tons of stone and metal crushed it into the sand. The arena fell silent. Even the crowd seemed stunned. Then, slowly, a single voice started chanting, then another, then thousands. Earthblood, Earthblood, Earthblood. Marcus stood slowly, his whole body screaming in protest. 3 opponents eliminated in under 5 minutes. He raised one fist to the crowd, then deliberately turned to face the Overseer's box. Korath was standing now, no longer lounging in his throne. Those burning eyes were fixed on Marcus, and this time, there was no mistaking the expression. Interest. Real, genuine interest. Marcus gave a small, mocking bow, then turned and walked toward his gate. Each step was agony, but he didn't let it show. Never let them see you weak. Never let them see you break. Back in the Warren, Garrett was waiting with something that might have been approval on his scarred face. 2 fights, 6 kills, and you've got Korath's attention. Not bad for an engineer. 3 kills, Marcus corrected, lowering himself carefully to the ground. The Calaxian survived. You sure about that? Marcus just nodded, too tired to explain. His ribs were definitely broken, and the acid burns on his back felt like they were eating through to his spine. But none of that mattered. He had 3 more fights to win. Then he could challenge for the Royal Games. 3 more fights to save Alara. Hey, Garrett said, pulling something from his pocket. Caught this on the prison feeds earlier. Thought you might want to see. It was a small display pad, cracked and barely functional, but the image on it was clear enough. Security footage from somewhere else in the complex, showing a line of humans being processed, and there, in the middle of them, was Alara. She was fighting, even in magnetic restraints, even surrounded by guards. She was fighting. Her red hair was matted with blood, probably not all hers, and her face was bruised, but her eyes were fierce and unbroken. The footage showed her headbutting a guard, dropping him despite the restraints. It took 3 others to subdue her, and even then, she managed to bite one of them. The timestamp was from that morning, just hours ago. She's in the Royal Preparation Chambers, Garrett said. They're training her for the games, making her into a proper gladiator. Marcus stared at the image, memorizing every detail. She was alive. She was fighting. She hadn't given up. Neither would he. The next match, he said to Garrett. When? Tomorrow, maybe the day after if your injuries are too severe. Tomorrow, Marcus said firmly. It has to be tomorrow. Garrett studied him. You know, most people who catch Korath's attention end up dead in creative ways. He likes to play with his toys until they break. Then I'll just have to be unbreakable. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat in his corner, feeling his enhanced metabolism already working on his injuries. The burns would scar, but they'd heal. The ribs would take longer, but he could fight through the pain. He'd fought through worse. He thought about Alara, probably in a cell not so different from this one. Did she know he was here? Did she think he was dead? It didn't matter. What mattered was that in 3 days, she'd be thrown into the Royal Blood Games, where the Empire's elite would watch her fight and die for their amusement. Unless he got there first. The Warren was quiet except for the occasional sob or nightmare from the other fighters. Marcus used the time to plan. The next 3 fights would be increasingly difficult. They'd throw their best at him, trying to either kill him or break him for the Overseer's amusement. But they'd also give him better equipment, more options. Every fight was a chance to gather resources, make allies, learn the arena's weaknesses. Because Garrett was wrong about one thing. Marcus wasn't planning to be unbreakable. He was planning to be the one who did the breaking. A soft sound made him look up. The Thurlian from earlier was at the Warren's entrance, her scales shimmering with nervous patterns. She beckoned to him. Marcus rose carefully, his injuries protesting, and followed her through the dimly lit corridors. She led him to a small alcove, away from any obvious surveillance. "Why?" she asked without preamble. "Why what?" "Why spare the Calaxian? Why fight to save your female? Why any of this you could accept your fate, die quickly, painlessly?" Marcus thought about how to answer. "Have you ever been in love?" The Thurlian's scales shifted to a deep purple he couldn't interpret. "My species bonds for life. One partner, one connection, until death." "Then you understand, Ilara isn't just my wife. She's my partner, my equal, my better half. Honestly, she's the one who convinced me to leave the military, to try for a normal life. She's the one who makes me want to be better than I am." He leaned against the wall, exhaustion creeping in. "If I die trying to save her, at least I die as someone worth being." The Thurlian was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled something from her robes, a small vial filled with luminescent blue liquid. "Regeneration serum, military grade. It will heal your injuries by tomorrow." Marcus took the vial carefully. "This must be worth a fortune." "Why?" "Because your female isn't the only one they have. My daughter. She was taken 6 months ago. She's in the royal stables now, being prepared." Her scales rippled with what could only be grief. "If you make it to the royal games, if you somehow survive, find her. Her name is Silthara. Tell her I never stopped trying." Before Marcus could respond, she was gone, melting back into the shadows. He looked at the vial in his hand. Military-grade regeneration serum could heal almost anything short of death. But it came with a cost. The metabolic acceleration would consume enormous amounts of energy. He'd need to eat, and a lot, or risk burning out his own body. Back in the Warren, he found Garrett had left a pile of ration bars by his corner, more than a week's worth of food. The cyborg was nowhere to be seen, but the message was clear. Marcus downed the serum in one gulp. It tasted like battery acid and burned all the way down, within seconds. He could feel it working, his cells dividing at an accelerated rate, bones knitting, burns healing. He tore into the ration bars, eating mechanically, fueling the transformation. By dawn, he was healed, scarred but healed, and when the announcement came for his next match, he was ready. The gate opened to reveal an arena transformed once again. This time it was flooded, black water up to his knees, hiding whatever might be beneath. The crowd was larger than ever, word of the earth blood having spread through the city. His opponent was already waiting, a hydratic, an aquatic species that looked like someone had crossed a shark with an octopus and given it armor plating. In water, even shallow water, it would have every advantage. Marcus smiled. They thought they were making it harder for him. They had no idea what humans were capable of. For Ilara, he would win. For Ilara, he would survive. For Ilara, he would burn this whole place to the ground. The hydratic charged through the water with impossible speed, its tentacles whipping toward him like living spears. Marcus didn't dodge. Instead, he grabbed the nearest tentacle, letting it wrap around his arm, and pulled with all his strength. The crowd roared as the real fight began. The hydratic circled him in the black water, its bioluminescent patches creating an eerie light show beneath the surface. Marcus could feel vibrations through the water, the creature's echolocation painting him as clearly as any spotlight. The crowd had grown quiet, anticipating the kill. Humans didn't win in water. Everyone knew that. Marcus let go of the tentacle and dove backwards, submerging himself completely. The water was warmer than he'd expected, almost body temperature, and thick with something that wasn't quite algae. His eyes burned, but he kept them open, watching the hydratic's shadow approaching fast. At the last second, he planted his feet on the arena floor and pushed off at an angle, breaching the surface like a dolphin. The hydratic's jaws snapped shut where he'd been, its frustration evident in the ultrasonic shriek that followed. Marcus landed hard, water exploding around him, and immediately rolled to avoid another tentacle strike. "Come on, fish boy," he muttered, backing toward one of the partially submerged platforms. "Let's see how you handle being the prey for once." The hydratic rose from the water, its full bulk revealed, 9 feet of muscle, cartilage, and bad attitude, with teeth that belonged in nightmares. It spoke, its voice a gurgling rasp through the translator. "Land meat thinks it can swim, then I will show you how we feed in the deep places." Big talk from someone who probably got caught in a fishing net, Marcus shot back, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Laughter rippled through the stands. The hydratic's phosphorescent patches flared angry red. It charged again, but this time Marcus was ready. He'd noticed something during their first exchange. The creature's left eye was clouded, probably an old injury, a blind spot. Marcus feinted right, then dove left, into the blind spot. His knife found the gap between armor plates, drawing thick. Dark blood, the hydratic spun, tentacles whipping wildly, but Marcus was already moving, using the creature's own momentum against it. They danced through the water for what felt like hours, but was probably minutes. Strike, counterstrike, dodge, reposition. Marcus's lungs burned, his muscles screamed, but he kept moving. He couldn't match the hydratic's strength or speed in water, but he could outlast it. Humans were persistence hunters, after all. The turning point came when the hydratic overcommitted to a killing lunge. Marcus grabbed 2 of its tentacles and twisted them together, tangling them like rope. The creature's own strength worked against it, tightening the knot. It thrashed, trying to free itself, and Marcus used the distraction to get on its back. The knife went in clean, between the skull plates, finding whatever the hydratic used for a brain stem. The creature stiffened, then slowly toppled forward into the water. Marcus rode it down, making sure it was truly dead before releasing his grip. He stood in the blood-darkened water, chest heaving, and raised his arms to the crowd. The roar was deafening. They were chanting again, Earth Blood, but also something new, Story Maker. Someone had been paying attention to his conversation with Garrett. As he waded toward his gate, Marcus caught movement in the overseer's box. Korath was speaking to someone, a figure hidden in shadows. Whatever was being discussed, it was causing quite a reaction. Other elite boxes were lighting up with activity. Back in the Warren, things had changed. The other fighters no longer avoided him. They watched with a mixture of respect and calculation. 3 fights, 7 kills, in 2 days. That was almost unheard of for a human. Garrett was waiting with medical supplies and news. "You've caused quite a stir," the cyborg said, examining Marcus's new wounds. "Betting pools are going crazy. Some of the elite are trying to buy your contract." "Can they do that?" "Not once you're in the arena system. You belong to the Crucible until you die or earn your freedom." Garrett paused. "Which no human has ever done. By the way, first time for everything." "Maybe, but here's the real news. Your next fight has been scheduled for tonight." Marcus looked up sharply. "Tonight, but that's unprecedented, yeah. Apparently, the Overseer wants to see what you're really made of. You're fighting Ryla the Red." The name meant nothing to Marcus, but the way the other fighters in the Warren went silent spoke volumes. Garrett continued, voice lower. "She's Korath's personal champion. Undefeated in 43 matches. She's killed 6 humans just this month. Why would he risk his champion on me? Because you're becoming a problem. The crowd loves you. You're making the other humans hope. That's dangerous for the established order." Garrett's mechanical hand clenched. "He wants Ryla to make an example of you. Slowly." Marcus stood, testing his injuries. The regeneration serum had helped, but he was far from peak condition. "Tell me about her." "Thrakari species, female, 7 feet tall, built like a siege engine. But here's the thing, she's not just muscle. She's smart, tactical. She studies her opponents, finds their weaknesses." Garrett pulled out the broken display pad, showing a grainy video. This was last week. The footage showed a red-skinned warrior in ceremonial armor systematically dismantling 3 opponents. She didn't just fight, she performed, turning violence into art. Every move was calculated for maximum impact, both physical and psychological. She's also got a reputation, Garrett added. Never shows mercy, never accepts surrender. She fights until her opponent is dead, no matter what. Marcus studied the video, his engineer's mind analyzing patterns, looking for flaws. There was something about the way she moved, a slight hesitation when she turned left. Old injury, maybe, or just a quirk of her species' anatomy. I need information, Marcus said. Everything you can find about Thrakari physiology, weaknesses, pressure points, anything. Already ahead of you. Garrett produced a small data chip. Everything I could scrape from the prison archives. But Marcus, this isn't like your other fights. Ryla isn't some half-starved pit fighter. She's a professional killer. So am I, Marcus said quietly. I just had a different job title. The hours until the fight passed too quickly. Marcus studied the data, memorized every scrap of information about Thrakari biology. They had redundant organs, making them hard to kill with body shots. Their joints, however, were surprisingly fragile. Evolution having traded flexibility for armor. And their eyes, while excellent in bright light, took longer to adjust to darkness. When the call came, Marcus was as ready as he could be. The preparation chamber held better equipment this time. Real armor, fitted to his measurements. A selection of weapons that weren't just for show. They wanted this to be a real fight. A spectacle worthy of their champion. Marcus chose light armor that wouldn't slow him down and a pair of short swords. The weight felt good in his hands, balanced and sharp. He also pocketed a small surprise from the selection table, a flashbang grenade, probably meant for another match but forgotten in the inventory. The arena had been transformed again. This time, it was set up like a classical amphitheater, circular and simple. No obstacles, no environmental hazards, just two warriors and death. Ryla was already there when he emerged. The video hadn't done her justice. She stood in the center of the arena like a statue carved from red marble, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the lights. Her face was angular, almost beautiful in an alien way, with high cheekbones and eyes that burned golden. 4 arms, each holding a different weapon sword, spear, mace, and a whip that crackled with electricity. She didn't move as Marcus approached, didn't acknowledge him at all until he was within speaking distance. "You are the one causing such excitement," she said, her voice carrying despite the crowd's noise. "The human who shows mercy, who makes stories—" "Guilty as charged," Marcus replied, keeping his tone light despite his racing heart. "I am curious about something." She tilted her head, studying him. "Do you know what happened to the Calaxian you spared?" Marcus's blood chilled. "What about him?" "He was executed this morning. Slowly. The Overseer doesn't approve of survivors who don't earn their survival." Her golden eyes never left his. "Your mercy killed him more surely than your blade would have." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Marcus had thought he was giving the creature a chance. Instead, he'd condemned it to a worse death. Ryla continued, "This is what your stories bring. False hope, pointless gestures. Death comes for everyone here. The only choice is whether it comes quickly or slowly." "You're wrong," Marcus said, finding his voice. "The only choice is whether we face it on our knees or on our feet." "Pretty words. Let's see if you can fight as well as you speak." She moved without warning, all 4 arms striking in a coordinated pattern that should have been impossible. Marcus barely got his swords up in time. The impact jarring his arms, the spear thrust for his heart while the mace swung for his head. He twisted, deflecting the spear with one sword while ducking the mace. The electric whip caught him across the back, sending agony through his nervous system. He rolled forward under her guard and came up swinging. His blade met her armor and skittered off, barely leaving a scratch. She was faster than the video had shown, stronger than he'd calculated, and she was holding back. He realized, testing him, playing with her food. "Disappointing," she said, batting aside his attack with casual ease. "I expected more from the great Earthblood." Marcus backed up, circling, trying to buy time to think. She matched him step for step, patient as a predator. The crowd was getting restless, wanting blood. "Tell me something," Marcus said, breathing hard. "Why do you fight? You're clearly not a slave." "I fight because I am very good at it," Ryla replied, "and because the overseer pays well for excellence." "That's it, money." "What else is there?" "Family, love, freedom." She actually laughed, a sound like grinding stone. The human believes in fairy tales. How charming. She attacked again, and this time she wasn't testing. The onslaught was relentless. 4 weapons creating a web of death that Marcus could barely navigate. He gave ground steadily, his swords ringing against her weapons in a deadly symphony. A feint with the spear drew his guard high, and the mace caught him in the ribs. Marcus felt bones crack again and tasted blood. He stumbled, and she pressed her advantage. The whip wrapped around his ankle. Yanking him off his feet, he hit the sand hard, stars exploding across his vision. Ryla stood over him, spear raised for the killing blow. "Any last words for your stories?" Marcus's hand found the flashbang in his pocket. "Yeah, you talk too much." He triggered the grenade and rolled aside. The explosion of light and sound was devastating in the enclosed arena. Ryla staggered back, her sensitive eyes overwhelmed. Marcus didn't waste the opportunity. He swept her legs, the move Garrett had shown him worked on most bipedal species, and she went down hard. But even blinded and disoriented, she was dangerous. Her arms swept out in defensive patterns, and one caught Marcus across the chest, sending him flying. He landed hard but kept his grip on his swords. The crowd was on its feet, screaming. This was what they'd come for, a real fight, not an execution. Ryla's vision was clearing, her golden eyes blinking away the after effects. Clever, she admitted, getting to her feet. But tricks won't save you. "Not trying to save myself," Marcus said, spitting blood. "I'm trying to save someone else." Something in his tone made her pause. "The female, the one in the royal preparation chambers." "My wife." Ryla was quiet for a moment, then did something unexpected. She lowered her weapons slightly. "Tell me about her." "What?" "You heard me. Tell me about this woman worth dying for." Marcus didn't understand the game, but he played along. She's everything I'm not. Brave where I'm cautious, kind where I'm cynical. She makes me want to be better than I am. And she's worth all this, worth dying in the sand for the amusement of crowds. She's worth burning this whole place to the ground." Ryla studied him for a long moment. Then, so quietly only he could hear, she said, "My sister is named Rena. She is 8 cycles old. The overseer has her in his personal quarters. If I don't fight, if I don't win, she dies." The pieces clicked into place, the ceremonial armor not a champion's choice but a costume. The reputation for no mercy, not cruelty but desperation. She was as much a slave as any of them. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, meaning it. "Don't be. We all have our chains." She raised her weapons again, but her stance was different, still aggressive, but somehow less lethal. "Fight me, human, make it look good. Give them their show." They came together again, but this time it was different. Still violent, still dangerous, but there was a rhythm to it, almost a dance. Marcus began to notice things, the way she telegraphed certain moves, the openings she left that weren't quite mistakes. She was helping him, teaching him as they fought. The spear thrust that should have impaled him instead showed him how to redirect force. The mace swing that should have crushed his skull demonstrated the importance of angular momentum. Even the whip, crackling with electricity, traced patterns that were more instruction than attack. But they couldn't keep it up forever. The crowd wanted a conclusion. Korath wanted a death. Ryla leaned in during a clinch, their weapons locked. "Listen carefully. The Royal Games have a tradition tag team matches. Champions can choose partners. If you survive this, if you make it that far, remember that." She shoved him back and attacked with renewed fury. This time, one of her swings connected properly, her sword slicing deep into his shoulder. Marcus screamed, dropping one of his blades. Blood poured down his arm. The crowd roared approval. This was more like it. Marcus staggered, genuinely hurt now. Ryla advanced, and he saw something in her eyes, regret. but also determination. She was going to end this. She had to. But Marcus wasn't done. As she raised her spear for the killing blow, he dropped to his knees, not in surrender, but to grab a handful of the black sand. He flung it in her face, a move so basic, so primitive, that she never saw it coming. Ryla stumbled back, clawing at her eyes. Marcus forced himself to his feet, picked up his dropped sword with his good arm, and in one fluid motion, drove both blades into the gaps in her armor he'd memorized from their dance. She gasped, golden eyes wide with surprise, but as she fell, she whispered something only he could hear. "The maintenance tunnels beneath Sector 6. Your wife trains there at night, alone." Ryla collapsed into the sand, her golden blood mixing with his red. The arena erupted. They'd just witnessed something unprecedented, a human defeating Korath's champion. Marcus dropped his swords and knelt beside Ryla. To the crowd, it might have looked like he was savoring his victory. In reality, he was checking her wounds. The blades had gone exactly where she'd guided them during their fight. Painful, bloody, but missing every vital organ her species possessed. "Stay down," he whispered. "Play dead." The faintest smile crossed her lips before her eyes closed. Medical teams rushed out, and Marcus let them take him. His shoulder was a ruin, and he'd lost enough blood to make standing a challenge. But as they carried him toward the medical bay, he caught sight of the overseer's box. Korath was standing at the window, those burning eyes fixed on Marcus. The overseer raised one hand and slowly, deliberately, applauded. The medical bay was a nightmare of alien technology and indifferent care. They patched Marcus up with the bare minimum enough to keep him fighting, but not enough to make him comfortable. The doctor, a six-eyed creature that looked like a praying mantis crossed with a surgeon's fever dream, chittered at him while working. "You killed the Red Champion. Very impressive, very stupid." "She's not dead," Marcus said through gritted teeth as the creature sutured his shoulder with something that burned like acid. "Perhaps not yet, but the overseer doesn't tolerate failure. She'll be in the punishment cells by tomorrow if she survives." The doctor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "You humans, always making things complicated." After the medical treatment, Marcus wasn't returned to the General Warren. Instead, he was taken to a different section of the complex, the Champion's Quarters. It was still a cell, but a nicer one. An actual bed instead of straw, a water source that didn't smell like rust, even a small window that looked out over the city. Veroth Prime spread out below him, a sprawling metropolis of organic architecture and bioluminescent lights. Somewhere out there, in tunnels beneath Sector 6, Alara was training, alone. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts, not the harsh bang of guards, but something almost polite. Marcus opened it to find the Thurlian from before, her scales shimmering with anxiety. "You survived," she said, slipping inside quickly. "Barely. The entire complex is talking about it, a human defeating the Red Champion. The betting pools are in chaos." She pulled out another vial, this one filled with amber liquid. "Pain suppressant. You'll need it for tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" "Your final qualifying fight. Win that, and you can challenge for the Royal Games." Her scales shifted to a darker pattern. "The Overseer has chosen your opponent personally. Let me guess something big, mean, and impossible to beat." "A Gorlath berserker. They're shipping it in specially from the war prisons." Marcus had heard of Gorlath berserkers, genetically modified super soldiers from a species that was already naturally violent. They were typically executed rather than imprisoned because they were too dangerous to contain. "He really wants me dead," Marcus observed. "Or he wants to see what you're truly capable of." The Thurlian moved to the window, looking out at the city. "Things are changing here. Your fights, your story. It's spreading beyond the arena. The human slaves in the mines are talking about Earthblood, about the one who shows mercy and still wins. That's not going to end well for them." "Perhaps not, but hope, even false hope, can be powerful." She turned back to him. "Your wife, I've seen her fight. She's remarkable." "Tell me." She broke a trainer's arm yesterday, bit through another's hand. They've had to assign 6 guards just to move her from cell to training ground. The Thurlian scales rippled with something that might have been admiration. She keeps saying something. He's coming for me. Over and over. Marcus's throat tightened. Even now, even in this hell, Alara believed in him. There's more. The Thurlian continued. Ryla survived. She's in the punishment cells, as expected, but alive. And she's been asking for you. Can you get me to her? That would be... The Thurlian stopped, her scales suddenly flashing danger patterns. Someone's coming! The door burst open. Guards poured in, weapons raised. Behind them, impossibly, came Overseer Korath himself. Up close, he was even more terrifying. 8 feet tall, his biomechanical armor shifting and adjusting constantly, like it was alive. His eyes burned with their own light, and when he smiled, his mouth split too wide, showing multiple rows of teeth. The famous Earthblood, Korath said, his voice like grinding gears. Leave us. The guards and the Thurlian fled, though Marcus caught the terror in her scale patterns as she left. Korath moved into the room with predatory grace, examining everything with those burning eyes. You interest me, human. Do you know why? My sparkling personality. Korath laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Perhaps, but no. You interest me because you're an anomaly. Humans are supposed to be weak. Prey, food for better species. He moved closer, and Marcus could smell ozone and copper. But you're not prey, are you? You're something else. Something dangerous. I'm just trying to survive. Lie. The word cracked like a whip. You're trying to save your female. Noble, pointless, but noble. Korath circled him slowly. I could kill her now. You know, one word from me, and she dies. Slowly. Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his voice steady. But you won't. Oh, why not? Because you're curious. You want to see how this story ends. Korath stopped directly in front of him, those burning eyes boring into his. Very good. You understand the game. Yes. I want to see how far you'll go, how much you'll sacrifice, how much pain you'll endure. He leaned in close, his breath hot on Marcus's face. And when you finally break, when you finally fall, I want to see the hope die in your eyes. I won't break. Everyone breaks. Human, everyone. Korath moved to the door, then paused. Your fight tomorrow, the Gorlath, I've instructed them to pump it full of combat stimulants. It won't just try to kill you. It will try to eat you. Slowly. That too wide smile again. Sweet dreams, Earthblood. After he left, Marcus sank onto the bed, his whole body shaking. Not from fear, but from rage. Pure, clean rage that burned through him like fire. Tomorrow, he would face the Gorlath. He would win, because he had to. And then the Royal Games, where Alara waited. But now he had another goal. It wasn't enough to save Alara. It wasn't enough to escape. Overseer Korath had to die. The maintenance tunnels Ryla had mentioned called to him. Sector 6. Alara trained there at night, alone. If he could find a way out of this cell, if he could navigate the complex without being caught. Marcus looked at the window, studying the drop. 3 stories to a sloped roof. From there, a series of bioluminescent growth clusters that might hold his weight. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was exactly what Alara would do. Marcus smiled for the first time in days. Tomorrow, he would fight the Gorlath, but tonight, he was going to see his wife. The window's bioglass was harder than it looked. Marcus had to strike it 3 times with the metal frame of his bed before it finally cracked. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet night, but no alarms rang. Either the champion's quarters weren't monitored as closely as the regular cells, or someone was watching and choosing not to act. He wrapped his injured shoulder in torn bedding, protection against the glass shards, and squeezed through the opening. The drop to the roof was farther than he'd estimated, and his landing was less graceful than planned. Pain shot through his ribs as he rolled to dissipate the impact. coming to rest against a ventilation growth that pulsed with warm air. Varoth Prime's triple moons cast everything in silver and shadow. The organic architecture of the complex spread out around him like a living maze. Structures that grew rather than being built, connected by bridges of calcified tissue and metal supports. Somewhere below, in Sector 6, Alara was training, alone. Marcus moved carefully across the roof, testing each step. The surface was spongy, like walking on flesh, and occasionally it would twitch or pulse beneath his feet. He followed the ventilation growths, using them as guides toward the maintenance sections. A sound made him freeze. Guards, 2 of them, walking a patrol route on a bridge below. They were Varothian, their bioluminescent eyes sweeping the darkness. Marcus pressed himself flat against the roof's surface, barely breathing. "Heard about the human," one guard said, his translated voice carrying in the still air. "The Earthblood Korath's new pet. Pet that killed the Red Champion. That's no pet. That's a problem. Korath will handle it. He always does. Remember the Saxian uprising?" "Yeah, fed their leader to his own children, piece by piece." They moved on, their voices fading. Marcus waited another full minute before continuing, his mind processing what he'd heard, the Saxian uprising. He'd file that information away for later. The maintenance access was exactly where architectural logic suggested it would be, a sphincter-like opening in the building's side that dilated when he approached. The tunnel beyond was lit by phosphorescent growths, casting everything in pale green light. It smelled of machinery and organic decay. Marcus navigated by instinct and engineering knowledge, buildings, even alien ones, followed certain patterns. Water flowed downhill. Power conduits ran along main structural supports. Maintenance areas clustered around essential systems. He followed the largest tunnel, moving deeper into the complex. Voices ahead made him duck into an alcove, not guards this time, but workers. A group of Thurlians, their scales dull with exhaustion, pushing a cart full of what looked like feeding tubes. "Double shifts again," one complained, ever since the humans started their story. "Quiet," another hissed. "You want to end up in the arena yourself?" "I'm just saying, things are getting worse. More guards, more restrictions, all because of one human who won't die properly." They passed without noticing him, and Marcus emerged from his hiding spot. The tunnel split ahead, and he chose the path that sloped downward. Sector 6 would be in the lower levels, where they kept the serious fighters. The sound reached him before anything else, the distinctive clash of weapons, the grunt of exertion, the impact of bodies hitting the ground. Marcus's heart raced. He moved faster, following the sounds through the twisting passages. The training area was a natural cavern that had been converted into a combat space. Various weapons lined the walls, and the floor was covered in the same black sand as the arena. In the center, alone, as Ryla had promised, was Alara. She was fighting training drones, mechanical opponents that attacked in programmable patterns. 3 of them circled her, and she moved between them like flowing water. Her red hair was longer than he remembered, tied back in a practical braid. She wore the same type of training clothes they'd given him, rough fabric that showed every scar and bruise. And there were many. Her arms were covered in cuts, some fresh, some healing. A massive bruise painted her left ribs purple and green. Her knuckles were split and bloody, but her movements were sure, deadly, beautiful. She destroyed the first drone with a combination that would have made his old combat instructors proud. A feint high, a sweep low, then driving her improvised weapon through its optical center. The second drone she simply outlasted, dodging its attacks until its power cell depleted. The third she took apart methodically, targeting joints and weak points with surgical precision. When the last drone fell, she stood in the center of the carnage, breathing hard. Then she spoke to the empty air. "I know you're there. Been following me for the last 2 minutes. Either attack or go away. I'm not in the mood for games." Marcus stepped out of the shadows. "Good to know marriage hasn't dulled your situational awareness." Alara spun around, her green eyes wide with shock. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the training ground. Then she was running, and he was running, and they collided in the middle like two stars falling into each other's gravity. She kissed him fiercely, desperately, her hands gripping his face like she was afraid he might disappear. He held her just as tightly, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, in his ribs, everywhere. None of it mattered. She was here. She was alive. She was real. When they finally broke apart, she punched him in the chest, hard. Ow, what was that for? For getting yourself captured, you idiot. But she was crying, tears cutting tracks through the dirt and blood on her face. I heard them talking about a human in the arena. Earthblood, they called him. I knew it was you. I knew you'd come for me. Always, he said, pulling her close again. Always. They sank to the ground together, and for a few precious moments, the universe consisted of just the two of them. Marcus told her about his fights, about Ryla and the secret alliance, about Korath's interest. Alara told him about the royal games, about the other fighters being prepared, about the horrors she'd witnessed. There's going to be 12 champions around, she said, her head on his shoulder, plus their partners for the tag matches. They're bringing in fighters from across the empire. Some of them aren't even slaves. They're volunteers, here for the prize. What prize? A moon. Whoever wins gets governorship of one of Veroth Prime's moons, complete with slaves, resources, everything. And if we win, Alara looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Marcus, no one wins. Not really. Even if you survive, even if you become champion, you're still property. You just get a nicer cage. Then we don't play by their rules. He told her about the conversation he'd overheard, about the Saxian uprising. There have been rebellions before. They failed because they were alone. But if we could unite the fighters, the slaves in the mines, maybe even some of the guards who are slaves themselves. You're talking about war. I'm talking about burning this whole place to the ground. For you, for us, for everyone who's died in that arena. Alara studied his face, and he saw something shift in her eyes. The woman who'd convinced him to leave the military, to try for a peaceful life, was gone. In her place was a warrior. The other human fighters in the Royal Games prep, there's 5 of us. 2 men, 3 women. They're all military trained, captured from different colonies. She stood, pacing as she thought. If we could coordinate during the games, work together instead of against each other. Ryla mentioned tag teams. Champions choose partners. If I can get into the games, I choose you. The crowd would love it. Husband and wife, fighting together. It's the kind of story they eat up. Alara's smile was sharp as a blade. But Marcus, there's something else. The games aren't just fighting. There are challenges, puzzles, things that require more than just combat skills. Good thing I'm an engineer then. A sound echoed through the tunnels. Voices, getting closer. Alara grabbed a weapon from the wall, but Marcus put a hand on her arm. I should go. If they find me here, we're both dead. Wait. She pulled something from her pocket, a small device that looked like a modified communicator. I lifted this from a trainer. Short range, encrypted, but it works. Channel 9 at midnight. Every night if you can. He took the device, tucked it away. Alara, tomorrow I fight a Gorlath berserker. If something happens... She kissed him again, cutting off his words. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to win. You're going to make it to the Royal Games. And together, we're going to make them regret ever taking us. The voices were getting closer. Marcus had to go. But before he left, Alara grabbed his hand. Marcus, there's something else. The woman in the cell next to mine. She's Thrakari, like Ryla. Young, maybe 16 in their years. She keeps crying for her sister. Rana, Marcus breathed. Ryla's sister. She's here. In Korath's personal quarters, from what I've heard, he keeps her as insurance. The pieces of a larger plan began forming in Marcus's mind. Ryla fighting for her sister, the Thurlian whose daughter was in the royal stables. How many others were fighting not for glory or freedom, but for the people they loved? I have to go, he said, backing toward the tunnel. Marcus, Alara called after him, that thing you do in fights, the joking around, keep doing it, it's driving them crazy. They don't understand how someone can laugh while fighting for their life. It's because I'm not fighting for my life, he said. I'm fighting for yours. The journey back was harder. Dawn was approaching and the complex was waking up. Marcus had to hide 3 times from guard patrols, once pressed so tight into an alcove that he could barely breathe. By the time he made it back to his room, squeezing through the broken window just as the first sun crested the horizon, he was exhausted. But he couldn't sleep. In a few hours, he would face the Gorlath Berserker, a creature designed for nothing but killing, pumped full of combat drugs with orders to not just kill him, but to make it spectacular. Marcus examined the room's limited supplies, his engineer's mind working. The bed frame was solid metal, could be broken down into weapons. The synthetic fabric of the bedding was surprisingly strong, could be used as binding or a makeshift rope, the broken glass from the window. A knock at the door interrupted his planning. Not guards. Too polite for that. He opened it to find Garrett standing there with a tray of food and a grim expression. "Thought you might be hungry," the cyborg said, entering without invitation. He set the tray down and examined the broken window. Interesting ventilation modification. "I needed fresh air." "Sure you did." Garrett turned to face him. "You saw her." It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. "Good. A man needs something to fight for. Makes him dangerous." Garrett pulled out a small package. "Speaking of dangerous, thought you should see this." It was a video feed from elsewhere in the complex. Ryla in a punishment cell, chained but alive. But she wasn't alone. A smaller figure was with her, the family resemblance clear even across species. Rena. They'd reunited the sisters, but in captivity? Korath's idea of mercy, Garrett explained. Let them be together, but only in chains. He's planning to make Ryla watch if you lose today. Make her see what happens to those who fail him. Then I won't lose. The Gorlath Berserker has killed 43 opponents. It once ripped a Calaxian in half with its bare hands. They've pumped it so full of stims that it probably won't even feel pain. Everything feels pain, Marcus said. You just have to know where to apply pressure. Garrett studied him. You've changed. 2 days ago, you were an engineer trying to survive. Now I'm an engineer with a plan. Care to share? Marcus considered, then decided to take a risk. How many guards in this complex are slaves themselves? How many workers? How many people who'd rather see this place burn than continue serving? You're talking about rebellion. I'm talking about freedom. Garrett's mechanical hand clenched and unclenched. There are maybe 300 guards who are indentured, another 1,000 workers, but they're spread out. No organization, no weapons. What if they had both? Then you'd have a massacre. Korath's personal guard are all volunteers, true believers. They'd cut through a slave rebellion in minutes. Not if they were distracted. Not if it happened during the Royal Games, when all eyes are on the arena. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. You're serious? Deadly serious, but first, I need to survive today. The call came too soon. Marcus was escorted to the preparation chamber by a full squad of guards, their weapons trained on him the entire time. The champion's treatment, apparently, came with champion-level security. The weapon selection was even more extensive than before. Marcus chose carefully. A long spear for reach, a short sword for close work, and something that made him smile, a bag of small metal spheres, intended as projectiles but useful for so much more. The arena had been transformed into a killing ground. Obstacles that could provide cover but also trap. Elevated platforms that offered advantage but exposed you to attack. And in the center, a cage that was already rattling with the thing inside. The crowd was the largest yet, every seat filled, with more beings standing in the aisles. The elite boxes were all lit, figures moving behind privacy screens. In Korath's box, the overseer stood at the window, his burning eyes fixed on the arena floor. The announcement system crackled to life. Citizens of the Empire today, you witness history. The human Earthblood, slayer of champions, faces his greatest challenge from the war prisons of Cathari Prime, a creature so dangerous it has been kept in stasis for 5 years, the Gorlath Berserker. The cage exploded outward. The thing that emerged defied rational description. 9 feet of muscle and rage, covered in thick gray hide that looked like it could turn bullets. Its head was too small for its body, dominated by a mouthful of teeth that belonged on a deep-sea predator. 4 arms, each as thick as Marcus's torso, ended in claws that scraped furrows in the arena floor. But it was the eyes that were truly terrifying. Red, bloodshot, completely devoid of anything resembling sanity. The combat drugs had turned it into nothing but appetite and violence. It saw Marcus and charged without hesitation, crossing the distance faster than something that size should be able to move. Marcus dove aside, feeling the wind of its passage. The Gorlath hit the arena wall hard enough to crack it, then spun around, unaffected by the impact. "Okay," Marcus said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Someone forgot to tell it about foreplay." Nervous laughter rippled through the stands. The Gorlath charged again, and this time Marcus was ready. He planted the spear and let the creature's momentum do the work. The point went in deep, punching through the hide and into meat. The Gorlath didn't even slow down. It grabbed the spear shaft and snapped it like a twig, then backhanded Marcus across the arena. He hit a pillar hard enough to see stars, tasting blood. The crowd roared. This was what they'd come for. Marcus rolled aside as the Gorlath's fist pulverized the ground where he'd been. He came up running, the short sword in his hand. The creature pursued, its rage making it predictable. Marcus led it toward one of the elevated platforms, calculating angles and momentum. At the last second, he slid between its legs, slashing at what he hoped were tendons. The blade bit deep, black blood spraying, but the Gorlath just roared and kept coming. The drugs were blocking pain, just as Garrett had warned. But pain wasn't the only way to stop something. Marcus scattered the metal spheres across the arena floor as he backed away. The Gorlath, in its drug-fueled rage, didn't notice. Its foot came down on them, and even its massive weight couldn't maintain balance on the rolling spheres. It went down hard, face first into the black sand. Marcus didn't waste the opportunity. He sprinted forward, leaping onto the creature's back. The short sword found the base of its skull, seeking the brain stem. But the Gorlath's hide was too thick, the bone too strong. The blade skittered off, leaving only a shallow cut. The creature bucked, throwing Marcus off. He landed hard but kept rolling, avoiding the claws that raked the sand behind him. The Gorlath was up again, angrier than ever. One of its 4 arms hung limp. He damaged something with that tendon strike, but 3 were more than enough. They fought through the obstacle course, Marcus using every bit of cover, every elevation change, every environmental advantage he could find. But he was tiring, and the Gorlath wasn't. The drugs would keep it going until its heart exploded, and that could be hours. He needed a different approach. Marcus let himself be cornered, backed against one of the support pillars. The Gorlath advanced, sensing the kill. The crowd was on its feet, anticipating the end. "You know what your problem is?" Marcus said, breathing hard. "You're all muscle, no brains. Literally, in your case. That tiny head can't be packing much processing power." The Gorlath charged. Marcus waited until the last possible second, then dove aside. The creature's momentum carried it into the pillar at full speed. The impact was tremendous, shaking the entire arena. The pillar, already damaged from previous fights, cracked. But more importantly, the Gorlath's small head had taken the full force of the impact. It staggered back, shaking its head, momentarily stunned. The drugs could block pain, but they couldn't prevent concussion. Marcus grabbed one of the broken spear halves and charged, not at the Gorlath's body, but at its head. The jagged end went into its eye, deep into the brain behind it. The creature spasmed, its remaining arms flailing wildly. Marcus ducked and weaved, avoiding the death throes, then drove the weapon deeper. The Gorlath fell forward, twitched once, and was still. The arena was silent for a heartbeat, then it erupted. The sound was deafening. 50,000 voices screaming as one. They were chanting again, but not just earth blood now. They were chanting something else. Storymaker, Storymaker, Storymaker. Marcus stood over the Gorlath's corpse, breathing hard, blood running from a dozen wounds. He looked up at Korath's box. The overseer was applauding again, that too-wide smile visible even from this distance. Then Korath did something unexpected. He activated the arena's communication system, his voice booming across the complex. Citizens of Varoth Prime, you have witnessed something remarkable. A human, a species we thought weak and worthless, has defeated 3 of our greatest challenges. He has earned the right to enter the Royal Blood Games. The crowd roared approval. But, Korath continued, and the crowd quieted. The Royal Games require partnership. Earthblood must choose another to fight beside him. Who will stand with the Storymaker? This was it. The moment Marcus had been fighting toward, he raised his voice, shouting to be heard. I choose my wife, Alara Hale. Let husband and wife fight together, or not at all. The crowd loved it, the romance, the drama, the story. They chanted approval, demanding to see this partnership. Korath's laugh echoed across the arena. The Storymaker wants his female. Then he shall have her tomorrow. The Royal Blood Games begin Earthblood, and his mate will face the greatest champions of the Empire. Place your bets. Citizens will love conquer all, or will it die screaming in the sand? As the medical teams rushed out to tend to Marcus, he caught movement in another part of the arena. Gates were opening, and figures were being led out. The other competitors for the Royal Games, getting their first look at the arena. Among them, her red hair bright in the triple sun's light, was Alara. Their eyes met across the distance, and she smiled. It was a warrior's smile, sharp and dangerous. Tomorrow, they would fight together. Tomorrow, they would begin their real plan. Tomorrow, the Storymaker and his wife would give Varoth Prime a tale it would never forget. The royal preparation chambers were different from anything Marcus had experienced in the complex. Instead of cells, the competitors were given actual quarters with training facilities. The message was clear: you were still property, but valuable property worth maintaining. Marcus stood in the common area where all the Royal Games fighters had been gathered for orientation. 12 primary champions, plus their chosen partners. His eyes found Alara immediately. She stood with the other human fighters, her posture relaxed but ready. They hadn't been allowed to speak yet, kept separated by invisible boundaries of protocol and watchful guards. The other champions were a nightmare catalog of the Empire's most dangerous beings. A crystalline entity from the void reaches whose body refracted light into weapon beams, twin saurians whose scales could allegedly turn invisible. A mechanical construct that might have been fully artificial or might have been a heavily modified cyborg, and others, each more imposing than the last. But it was the human contingent that interested Marcus most. Besides Alara, there were 4 others. A scarred woman with cybernetic implants along her spine who moved like a dancer. A massive man whose body showed the telltale signs of genetic modification. A pair who might have been siblings, both lean and quick with the kind of synchronized movement that spoke of years fighting together. Overseer Korath entered the chamber with his usual theatrical flair, his biomechanical armor shifting and writhing. The room fell silent. Champions, he began, his voice filling the space. Tomorrow, you enter the Royal Blood Games. Some of you are here by choice, seeking glory and rewards. Others, his burning eyes fixed on Marcus, are here because they have no choice, but all of you will provide entertainment for the Empire. He gestured, and holographic displays materialized, showing the arena in various configurations. The games consist of 3 phases. First, the partnered battles. You and your chosen ally will face other teams in elimination matches. Survive, and you advance. Die, and you become fertilizer for our gardens. Nervous energy rippled through the room. Even the volunteers looked uneasy. Second, the challenge phase. Those who survive will face trials that test more than just combat prowess: intelligence, adaptability, creativity. The arena itself will become your enemy. The holograms shifted, showing elaborate death traps and puzzle mechanisms. Finally, for those few who remain, the championship round, a battle royale where alliances mean nothing and only one team can claim victory. "What about the prize?" one of the Saurians asked, its voice like grinding stone. Korath's smile was visible even at distance. "The winning team receives governorship of Kepler Moon, mineral rights, slave holdings, everything. Plus something more valuable, your freedom, true freedom, not just a nicer cage." Marcus felt Alara tense across the room. Freedom. It was more than they dared hope for. "You have tonight to prepare with your partners," Korath continued. "Tomorrow at dawn, the games begin. Die well, or better yet, kill well." He left, and the guards began organizing the fighters into their partnerships. Marcus moved toward Alara, but a hand on his shoulder stopped him. He turned to find Ryla standing there, no longer in chains but wearing a control collar that gleamed with threat. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "All of us." She led him to a corner where the other human fighters had gathered, up close. Marcus could see they were all military, all bearing the kind of scars that came from real combat. "Ryla the Red," the scarred woman said, eyeing the Thrakari warrior. "You're supposed to be dead." Disappointed, Ryla asked. Curious, Korath doesn't usually forgive failure. He didn't forgive, he repurposed. Ryla touched her collar. "I'm partnered with Kane here." She gestured to the massive, modified human. "If either of us tries to escape or rebel, both collars detonate." "Charming," Alara said, finally reaching Marcus's side. She slipped her hand into his, and he felt the slight tremor she was hiding from the others. "So what's this about?" "Survival," the woman said. "I'm Torres, former Colonial Marines Special Operations. The twins are Jack and Jenna Morrison, civilian contractors who got caught running guns to the resistance. We've all heard about you. Earthblood, your little shows in the arena." "Just trying to stay alive," and Marcus said. "Bullshit," Jack Morrison interjected. He was sharp-featured, with eyes that missed nothing. "You're planning something. The way you fight, the way you play to the crowd, you're not just trying to survive, you're trying to win." Marcus looked at each of them in turn, then made a decision. "What if I told you there was a way for all of us to survive? Not just one team, but every human here." "Impossible," Torres said. "The games are designed for maximum casualties." "The games are designed for maximum entertainment," Marcus corrected. "And nothing entertains like a good plot twist." He laid out his observations from the past days, the guards who were slaves, the workers pushed to breaking, the growing unrest sparked by his fights. "You're talking about rebellion," Kane said, his voice surprisingly soft for such a large man. "I'm talking about coordination. During the games, all eyes will be on the arena. Security will be focused on the crowds, on protecting the elite observers. It's the perfect time for an uprising." "Even if that's true," Jenna Morrison said, "we'd need weapons, organization, communication. We have none of that." "We have this." Marcus pulled out the modified communicator Alara had given him. "Short range, but encrypted. And we have allies." He looked at Ryla. "Your sister is safe." Ryla's expression softened slightly. "In a holding cell, but alive, Korath likes his leverage intact. The Thurlian who's been helping me, her daughter is in the stables. Garrett in the Fighter's Warren has connections to the mining slaves. We're not as alone as they want us to think." Torres was studying him with new interest. "You're serious about this?" "Deadly serious. But first, we need to survive tomorrow. That means working together, not against each other." "The rules say only one team can win," Kane pointed out. "The rules also said humans were too weak to survive the arena," Marcus replied. "I've been breaking their rules since I got here. Why stop now?" Before anyone could respond, a guard approached. Partnerships to your assigned training areas. Now. Marcus and Alara were escorted to a smaller chamber equipped with various weapons and training equipment. As soon as the door closed, she threw her arms around him. "God, I've missed you," she whispered into his shoulder. "We're together now," he said, holding her tight. "That's what matters." She pulled back to look at him, and he saw the steel in her green eyes. "The others, can we trust them?" "We don't have a choice, but yes, I think so. They're all military, all trained. They understand unit cohesion." Alara moved to the weapons rack, testing blade weights and balance. "The rebellion plan is insane. You know that, right?" "All the best plans are." She smiled, that sharp warrior's smile he'd seen across the arena. "Remember our anniversary on Europa Station when we had to improvise our way out of that bar fight?" "You mean when you started a bar fight because someone insulted my engineering degree?" They had it coming. She selected a pair of curved blades, testing their weight. "Point is, we've always been good at improvisation. But this, Marcus, if we fail, they won't just kill us. They'll make examples of us." "Then we don't fail." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "There's something else. The other human women in the prep chambers. We've been talking, the guards. They've been taking liberties. Nothing too extreme yet, but it's escalating." Rage, hot and pure, flooded through Marcus. "Who?" "Doesn't matter who. What matters is that it's creating opportunity. One of the guards, a Verothian named Thrace. He's been particularly aggressive. But here's the thing, he's also incredibly stupid, and he has access codes." Marcus's engineer mind immediately saw the possibilities. "You're planning to take his codes." "Already did." Alara produced a small data chip. "Copied them 3 nights ago when he was distracted. Haven't used them yet. Waiting for the right moment." The games during the chaos. Exactly. They spent the next hours training together, relearning each other's rhythms. Marcus had always been the technical fighter, all angles and calculated strikes. Alara was instinct and flow, adapting to whatever came. Together, they covered each other's weaknesses. As they sparred, Alara updated him on the intelligence she'd gathered. "The arena for tomorrow has been configured for multi-level combat. Platforms, bridges, environmental hazards. They're expecting us to use the verticality. So, we stay ground level, force the others to come to us. Unless the ground level is where they put the traps." "Good point." Marcus blocked her strike, countered with one of his own that she easily deflected. "What about the other teams?" "The Saurian twins are lethal but arrogant. They'll target whoever they see as the biggest threat first. The crystalline entity is nearly indestructible, but it needs light to function properly. In shadows, it's vulnerable." "And our fellow humans?" "Torres and her partner are solid, professional. They'll avoid us if they can. Focus on other threats. The Morrison twins are wild cards. They might help, might not. Kane and Ryla." She paused. "That's an interesting combination. Raw power and tactical brilliance. Ryla won't target us. We have an understanding." "You trust her?" "I trust that she wants her sister safe. That's enough for now." A chime indicated their training time was ending. Guards appeared to escort them back to their quarters, but before they were separated, Alara pressed something into his hand. Another communicator, even smaller than the first. "Channel 12, she whispered. "I've been in touch with someone on the outside. Someone who wants to help." Before Marcus could ask who, they were pulled apart. He was taken to his quarters, a room that was luxurious by prison standards but still very much a cell. The window looked out over the arena, already being prepared for tomorrow's spectacle. Marcus activated the communicator on Channel 12. Static, then a voice he didn't recognize. "Earthblood." "Who is this?" "Someone who shares your interest in seeing this place burn. You can call me Shepherd." "That's not a Verothian name." "Because I'm not Verothian, I'm human. Free human. Part of what you might call the underground railroad for escaped slaves." Marcus's pulse quickened. "There are free humans on Veroth Prime. More than you'd think. Hidden in the old city. The abandoned sectors. We've been watching your fights. Earthblood. You've given people hope. Hope doesn't win wars. No, but it starts them. We've been coordinating with the mining slaves, the indentured guards. When you make your move during the games, we'll be ready. How many? 300 fighters. Maybe more if we can convince the fearful. Plus whatever chaos the arena slaves can cause from inside. It wasn't an army, but it was more than Marcus had dared hope for. What do you need from us? Survive the first day, create enough spectacle that all security forces are focused on the arena. We'll handle the rest. And after, even if we succeed, they'll send reinforcements from off-world. Let us worry about that. You just focus on staying alive and keeping the crowds entertained. The bigger the show, the better our chances. The communication ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He moved to the window, studying the arena below. Workers were installing new obstacles, testing trap mechanisms. Tomorrow, that sand would be soaked with blood. The question was whose? His door chimed. Marcus opened it to find the Thurlian who'd been helping him. Her scales were patterns of deep anxiety. "I shouldn't be here," she said, slipping inside quickly. "What's wrong?" "Korath knows about the unrest, about the planning, not the details, but he knows something is building." Marcus's blood chilled. Is he going to stop it? That's just it. He's excited. He keeps saying this will be the best games ever, that the story maker will give him a tale worth telling. He wants the rebellion. He wants the spectacle. He doesn't care if the empire burns as long as he's entertained while it happens. She pulled out a small device. "This is from your friend Garrett. He says to plant it during the games. It's some kind of signal broadcaster." Marcus took the device. Examining it, it was sophisticated. Definitely not cobbled together from prison parts. Where did he get this? "I don't know. But he said to tell you the cavalry isn't coming. But the distraction is." Before Marcus could ask what that meant, alarms began blaring. Not the normal shift change alerts, but something urgent. The Thurlian scales flashed to pure white terror. "Lockdown," she gasped. "They're locking down the complex." She ran for the door, but it was already sealed. They were trapped. The communication system crackled to life, and Korath's voice filled the room. "Champions, we have a small situation. It seems some of our mining slaves have gotten ambitious. Attempted revolt. Very poorly planned, I'm afraid." Marcus's heart sank. If the miners had moved early, the entire plan could collapse. 32 dead rebels, their bodies now decorating the mine entrance as a reminder of what happens to those who defy the natural order. But this presents an opportunity. Of course it did. Everything was an opportunity to Korath. Tomorrow's games will now include a special opening ceremony. The families of the rebels, their children, their mates will be given a chance to earn forgiveness. They'll face our champions in glorious combat. Survival means absolution. Death means, well, death. The Thurlian made a sound of pure anguish. Her scales cycled through colors so fast they blurred. "My daughter," she whispered. "She was in the mines. If they think she was involved—" Marcus grabbed her shoulders. "We'll stop this, tomorrow, during the games." "How you'll be fighting for your lives." "Then we'll fight for theirs too." The lockdown continued through the night. Marcus used the time to plan, to prepare. The device from Garrett went into his armor's hidden pocket. The small communicator from Alara stayed close at hand, every few hours. He checked in with the other human fighters, coordinating through careful, coded messages. Torres and her partner were solid, ready to play along. The Morrison twins were harder to read but agreed to avoid targeting other humans in the first rounds. Kane was silent, but Ryla confirmed they were aligned. Dawn came too soon and not soon enough. Guards arrived to escort them to the arena, and Marcus saw the changes immediately. The crowds were larger, angrier. Word of the failed revolt had spread, and the bloodlust was palpable. The arena itself had been transformed into a multi-level nightmare. platforms at different heights, connected by narrow bridges, pits that dropped into darkness, sections that looked like they could collapse at any moment, and everywhere, weapons but not placed conveniently. They were prizes to be fought over. The champions were led to starting positions around the arena's edge. Marcus found himself next to Alara, and across from them, he could see Torres and her partner. The Morrison twins were to their left, Ryla and Kane to their right. The non-human champions were scattered between, all looking eager for violence. But it was the center of the arena that made Marcus's blood run cold. 40 civilians had been chained to posts throughout the combat area. Men, women, children, some were crying, others stood defiant, all were helpless. Korath's voice boomed across the arena. Citizens of the Empire, today's games begin with a special challenge. Our champions must navigate the arena while protecting or ignoring these rebel sympathizers. Save them and reduce your own chances of survival. Abandon them and live with the consequences. Let the games begin, Nesses. The starting horn sounded, and chaos erupted. The Saurian twins immediately went for the nearest weapon cache, their twin forms blurring with speed. The crystalline entity began refracting light into deadly beams, cutting down 2 other champions before they'd taken 5 steps. The civilians, Alara said, already moving. Together, Marcus confirmed. They ran toward the nearest group of chained prisoners, but the mechanical construct intercepted them. It was faster than anything that size should be, its blade arms whistling through the air. Marcus pushed Alara aside and rolled under the strike, coming up inside its guard. The construct's head swiveled completely around, tracking him with sensor arrays. Organic, weak, terminate. "You know what your problem is?" Marcus said, dodging another strike. "No imagination." He grabbed one of the arena's weapon prizes, a plasma cutter, and went for the construct's joints. Not to cut, but to weld. The plasma's heat fused the mechanical joints, locking them in place. The construct thrashed, trying to break free, but its own strength worked against it, stressing the frozen joints until they shattered. Alara had reached the first group of prisoners, working on their chains with tools she'd grabbed. A child, maybe 8 years old, looked up at her with wide eyes. "Are you angels?" the child asked. "No," Alara said, breaking the chains. "We're just humans. Run for the edge. Find cover." More champions were engaging now. The arena became a 3-dimensional battlefield, with combatants on every level. Marcus saw Ryla and Kane working in perfect synchronization, handling 2 other teams while also freeing prisoners. The Morrison twins had claimed a defensive position and were laying down covering fire with projectile weapons. Torres and her partner were in trouble. The crystalline entity had them pinned, its light beams creating a killing field they couldn't cross. Marcus grabbed Alara's hand. "We need to help them." "That thing will cut us apart." "Not if we remove its light source." Marcus had noticed the arena's lighting system powerful spots that could be redirected. He sprinted for the control panel he'd spotted, dodging between battling champions. A Varothian gladiator tried to stop him, but Alara intercepted, her blades dancing in deadly patterns. The control panel was basic, designed for simple adjustments, but Marcus was an engineer. Simple systems could be made to do complex things. He redirected every spotlight away from the crystalline entity's position, plunging that section into relative darkness. The entity's beams flickered, weakened. Torres didn't waste the opportunity, her cybernetic enhancements giving her the speed to close the distance. Her partner followed, and together they shattered the entity into 1,000 glittering fragments. But the real battle was just beginning. More civilian prisoners were being released, but they had nowhere to go. The arena's edges were sealed, and guards with weapons waited beyond. "Shepard," Marcus said into his communicator, "if you're going to do something, now would be good." 60 seconds, came the reply. A roar from above made everyone look up. The Saurian twins had claimed the highest platform and were now raining death on anyone below. One of them had found a heavy, repeating weapon, its shots tearing through cover and flesh alike. "I've got an idea," Alara said, pointing to the platform's support structure. "But it's going to take both of us." They moved together, Marcus providing cover while Alara planted the small explosive charges she'd somehow acquired. The Saurians were too focused on their killing spree to notice until it was too late. The platform collapsed, sending both twins plummeting. One managed to grab a bridge on the way down, but the other hit the arena floor with a wet crunch. Not dead, but definitely out of the fight. 30 seconds. More champions were falling. The arena was designed to concentrate combat, to prevent anyone from playing it safe. Marcus saw Kane go down, a spear through his thigh. Ryla stood over him, defending against 3 attackers at once. 20 seconds. The Morrison twins had been cornered by the remaining Saurian. Jack was already down, blood pooling beneath him. Jenna fought desperately, but she was outmatched. 10 seconds. Marcus made a decision. He activated the device Garrett had given him, then threw it as high as he could. It stuck to the arena's dome, began broadcasting something. 5 seconds. "Everyone down," Marcus shouted. The explosion wasn't from inside the arena. It was from outside, from the city beyond, then another, then dozens more. The crowd's roar turned to screams of panic as smoke began rising from multiple districts. Shepard hadn't been lying. The uprising had begun. The arena's dome cracked from the shockwave of a nearby explosion. Guards abandoned their posts, running to respond to the greater threat. The energy barriers holding the crowd in place flickered and failed. And in that chaos, in that beautiful, terrifying chaos, the real revolution began. The freed prisoners didn't run. They turned on their captors, using chains as weapons, numbers as strength. The crowd, panicking, surged in all directions. Some fled, others, the slaves and servants who'd been forced to attend, joined the fight. Korath's voice boomed over the chaos, but he was laughing, actually laughing. Magnificent, absolutely magnificent, the Storymaker gives me war itself as entertainment. Marcus found Alara in the chaos, pulled her close. Around them, the arena was transforming from a place of execution to a battlefield of liberation. "This is insane," she said, but she was smiling. "It's working. For now. But Marcus, we still need to—" The arena floor exploded upward. Something massive emerged from below. Something that had been waiting. Marcus's blood went cold as he recognized it. It wasn't just a creature. It was Korath himself, but changed. His biomechanical armor had expanded, merged with some kind of war machine. He stood 20 feet tall now, weapons sprouting from every limb, his burning eyes blazing with insane joy. "Did you think I didn't know?" he roared, his voice shaking the damaged dome. "Did you think I couldn't see the rebellion forming? I've been waiting for this, preparing for this." He grabbed a fleeing civilian, crushed them without looking, threw the body aside. "This is what I wanted. Story maker. Not just combat, but war. Not just death, but revolution. And now you'll give me the greatest story of all." Multiple weapon systems targeted Marcus and Alara. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. "You'll be the martyrs that inspire 1,000 more rebellions. Your deaths will echo across the Empire. Isn't it beautiful?" Marcus pushed Alara behind him, knowing it was useless. They'd come so far, done so much, but against this. Then Ryla was there, slamming into Korath's leg with all her strength, and Kane, dragging his wounded body forward, adding his strength, Torres and her partner, firing everything they had at the war machine's joints, even the Morrison twins, Jenna dragging her wounded brother, joining the fight. All the human champions, united against the real enemy. "Together," Marcus shouted, and they attacked as one. The combined assault of the human champions barely made Korath stumble. His war machine form absorbed the damage, biomechanical armor regenerating almost as fast as they could inflict wounds. A sweep of one massive arm sent Torres flying into a collapsed section of seating. Her partner rushed to her aid, only to be caught by a tentacle of living metal that sprouted from Korath's back. "Is this all?" Korath laughed, his voice distorted through multiple vocal systems. "The great human uprising, your insects." Marcus rolled under a plasma blast that turned sand to glass, came up next to where Alara was reloading a scavenged weapon. Around them, the arena was chaos. Some of the non-human champions had fled, others continued fighting each other, and a few had joined the rebellion. The crystalline entity's shattered remains were being used as improvised weapons by freed prisoners. "We can't match his firepower," Alara said, firing rounds that just sparked off Korath's armor. "We don't need to match it," Marcus replied, his engineer's mind racing. "We need to redirect it." He pointed to the damaged dome above. The cracks from the external explosions had weakened the entire structure. If they could bring it down... "Ryla," Marcus shouted. "The support pillars—" The Thrakari warrior understood immediately. She disengaged from her direct assault and sprinted for the nearest structural support, her blades seeking the stress points. Kane, despite his wounded leg, followed her lead on another pillar. Korath noticed their strategy and laughed even harder. "Yes, bring it all down, bury us together in a tomb of revolution." Multiple weapon ports opened on his transformed body, unleashing a barrage that forced everyone to cover. Jack Morrison, already wounded, took a direct hit. His sister Jenna screamed, rushing to him, but there was nothing left to save. "Jack!" Jenna's anguish turned to rage. She grabbed one of the arena's trophy weapons, something that looked like a small nuclear device, and charged directly at Korath. "No!" Torres shouted, but it was too late. Korath caught Jenna with one massive hand, lifting her like a doll. "Such spirit, such fury, this is what I wanted to see." "Burn in hell," Jenna spat and triggered the device. The explosion should have killed everyone in a 100-meter radius, but Korath's biomechanical form absorbed it, contained it, fed on it. When the smoke cleared, he stood unmarked, and Jenna Morrison was gone. "Delicious," Korath said. "Who's next?" That's when Marcus heard it, a sound that shouldn't exist on Varoth Prime, the distinctive whine of human military dropships. Everyone looked up as 3 ships punched through the city's defense grid, their hull markings bearing the insignia of the Colonial Defense Force. The cavalry that wasn't supposed to exist had arrived. "Impossible," Korath snarled, his amusement finally cracking. "The nearest human fleet is months away." "Unless they were already here," a new voice said over the arena's communication system, "hidden in your system's asteroid belt, waiting for a signal." Marcus recognized the voice. It was Shepard. The dropships opened fire, their plasma cannons targeting Korath directly. The Overseer raised shields Marcus didn't know he possessed, dome-like energy fields that deflected the assault, but it forced him to focus upward, dividing his attention. "Now," Marcus shouted. The human champions attacked in coordination. Ryla and Kane hit low, targeting knee joints. Torres and her partner went high, aiming for sensor arrays. Marcus and Alara worked the middle, using the distraction to plant every explosive device they'd gathered. But Korath was adapting. His form shifted, sprouted new defenses. A pulse of energy sent everyone flying. When Marcus struggled to his feet, he saw Kane wasn't moving. The big man's collar had detonated, whether from damage or Korath's command. Marcus couldn't tell. Ryla knelt beside her temporary partner, her golden eyes burning with fury. She looked up at Korath, then at Marcus. "The maintenance tunnels," she said. "Sector 6, the main power coupling for the entire complex." Marcus understood. If they could destroy that, the whole arena would lose power. No shields, no containment, no control. "Go," Ryla said. "I'll keep him busy." "That's suicide." "My sister is dead," Ryla said quietly. "Killed in the mining revolt. I have nothing left but revenge." She stood, all 4 arms spreading wide. "But you still have something to fight for." Before Marcus could respond, Ryla charged, not at Korath's body, but at the damaged pillars. Her assault was devastating, precise, bringing down massive sections of the dome. Debris rained down, and Korath had to shift his shields to avoid being buried. "Ilara, with me." Marcus grabbed his wife's hand and they ran for the maintenance access he'd used before. Behind them, They heard Ryla's war cry, Korath's rage, the continuing sounds of battle. The dropships were still firing, and explosions echoed across the city. The revolution had become a war. The maintenance tunnels were packed with fleeing slaves and workers. Some recognized Marcus, the Earthblood, and cleared a path. Others just ran, seeking any escape from the chaos above. "The power coupling," Marcus said to a Thurlian worker. "Where?" "Level 3, Section 6. But the automatics defenses are about to be our problem," Alara finished, already moving. They descended through industrial passages that grew increasingly fortified. This wasn't just maintenance anymore. This was the complex's vital infrastructure. Security drones appeared, but Alara handled them with brutal efficiency while Marcus worked on bypassing locked doors. "You know this is probably a one-way trip," Alara said as they reached level 3. "Probably. And you're okay with that? As long as we're together." She smiled, that fierce warrior's smile. "You always were a romantic." The power coupling chamber was massive, a cathedral of organic technology and conventional machinery. At its heart, a pillar of pure energy stretched from floor to ceiling, contained by fields that hummed with barely restrained power. And standing before it, as if waiting for them, was Garrett. But something was wrong. His cybernetic parts were different, more extensive, and his one human eye was gone, replaced by a burning orb that looked exactly like Korath's eyes, Marcus breathed. "Very good," Garrett said, but his voice was layered with harmonics that weren't his own. "Did you think the Overseer would have only one body, only one presence?" "You're a backup," Alara said, "a distributed consciousness." "I am evolution," Garrett Korath replied. "I infected your friend weeks ago. Every piece of information he gathered, every plan you made, I knew. I shaped it. I guided it. You wanted the rebellion. I wanted the story. And what a story it's been. The arena transforms into a battlefield. The Empire's slaves rise up. Human military forces appear from nowhere. It's magnificent." "You're insane. I'm an artist. And this," he gestured to the power coupling, "is where the final act begins." He attacked without warning, his cyborg body moving with inhuman speed. Marcus barely got his blade up in time to block, the impact sending him sliding across the floor. Alara flanked, but Garrett Korath was ready, his mechanical arm extending into a whip that wrapped around her throat. "The beauty is," Garrett Korath said conversationally while strangling Alara, "when this body dies, I simply wake up in another. I have dozens throughout the complex. You can't kill an idea. Marcus, you can't kill art." Marcus saw Alara's face turning purple, and something inside him snapped. Not rage, but clarity. Cold, perfect clarity. "You're right," he said, dropping his weapon. "We can't kill you." Garrett Korath paused, curious, surrendering. How disappointing. Not surrendering, thinking like an engineer. Marcus pulled out the device Shepard had given him, the one he'd thought was just a signal broadcaster. But looking at it now, understanding its true design, this isn't a broadcaster, it's a virus, a consciousness virus. For the first time, fear flickered in those burning eyes. "Garrett's cybernetics were already infected by you," Marcus continued, moving closer. "But that made them the perfect transmission vector. Every drone you control, every backup body, they're all networked through the same consciousness matrix." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Shepard knew what you were? The Colonial Defense Force has dealt with distributed consciousness entities before. They developed this specifically for beings like you." Marcus activated the device. "It doesn't kill you. It fragments you, splits your consciousness into 1,000,000 pieces, each aware but unable to reconnect." "No." Garrett Korath released Alara, lunging for Marcus, but Alara was ready. She'd palmed a plasma cutter during the fight, and as the cyborg passed, she severed his mechanical arm at the shoulder. He stumbled, and Marcus pressed the device against the exposed cybernetic ports. The effect was immediate. Garrett's body convulsed, patterns of light racing through his cybernetics like digital fire. His mouth opened in a scream that came from 1,000 throats throughout the complex. Every screen, every speaker, every system connected to Korath's network shrieked in agony. "You don't understand," Garrett Korath gasped, his voice fracturing. "Without me, the complex, the city, it will all burn," Marcus finished. "We know." Garrett's body collapsed, cybernetics sparking and failing. In his final moment, the real Garrett seemed to surface, his voice weak but his own. "Thank you." Then silence. Alarms began blaring immediately. Without Korath's consciousness managing the systems, fail-safes were triggering. The power coupling's containment field flickered. "We need to go," Alara said. "Now." They ran through corridors that were already beginning to fail. Lights flickered. Gravity plates malfunctioned. Atmospheric processors stuttered. The complex was dying, and taking everyone inside with it. They emerged into chaos. The arena was a war zone. Colonial Defense Force soldiers were evacuating civilians while fighting Verothian guards who refused to surrender. The dome had partially collapsed, and through the gaps, Marcus could see the city burning. In the center of it all, Korath's original war machine body stood frozen, seized up like a massive statue. The consciousness that had driven it was gone, scattered into digital oblivion. Marcus, Alara? They turned to find Torres, supporting Ryla, who was badly wounded but alive. Behind them, a small group of human survivors and freed slaves huddled together. "The dropships are loading evacuees," Torres said. "We need to move." They ran across the arena floor, dodging debris and ongoing firefights. A Verothian guard tried to stop them, but Ryla, despite her wounds, took him down with savage efficiency. "My sister," she gasped. "Find my sister." "She's dead," Torres said gently. "I'm sorry." Ryla's face crumpled, but she kept moving. They all did, because stopping meant dying. The dropship's ramp was just ahead, colonial soldiers laying down covering fire. Marcus saw other ships loading, hundreds of people fleeing the dying complex. Not just humans, but aliens who'd been slaves, who'd joined the rebellion. A massive explosion rocked the arena. The power coupling had finally destabilized. A pillar of energy erupted from the complex's heart, vaporizing everything in its path. "Move, move, move," a colonial sergeant shouted. They made it to the ramp just as another explosion tore through the arena floor. Marcus turned back to see the crucible, the place of so much death and suffering, collapsing in on itself. The stands where bloodthirsty crowds had cheered were now rubble. The sand where champions had died was now glass. As the dropship lifted off, Alara took his hand. "It's over," she said. "No," Marcus replied, "watching the city burn below, it's just beginning." The Verothian Empire wouldn't ignore this, a slave revolt that destroyed one of their premier entertainment complexes. Aided by human military forces, there would be retaliation. But looking around the dropship at the faces of those they'd saved, at the humans and aliens united by shared suffering and triumph, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since their capture. Hope. "What now?" Ryla asked, her golden eyes dull with grief but still burning with purpose. "Now we take this fight to them," Torres said. "The rebellion isn't just on Veroth Prime. What happened here will spread. Every slave in the Empire will hear about the Earthblood who turned the arena into a revolution." "The Storymaker," someone whispered. Marcus shook his head. "I'm just an engineer who wanted to save his wife." "And did," Alara said, leaning against him. "Though technically, I saved you a few times too." It was a team effort. The dropship broke atmosphere, and Marcus saw the colonial fleet waiting. Not just 3 ships, but dozens. Shepard hadn't lied about the scope of the resistance. A communication came through from the lead ship. "Dropship Alpha, this is Admiral Harrison of the Free Colonial Fleet. We're reading massive casualties but significant survivor retrieval. Prepare for immediate jump